Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
The call came at 6 in the morning. Lena heard Caleb's phone buzzing against the nightstand before she felt him jolt awake beside her. She kept her eyes closed, listening to his sharp intake of breath as he read whatever message had arrived. Damn it. His voice carried a weight she'd never heard before. Lena opened her eyes. Caleb sat on the edge of their bed, his shoulders rigid. The phone trembled in his hands. What is it? He didn't turn around. My mother's dead. Lena sat up, reaching for him. Caleb, I'm so sorry. When did? 3 days ago. His voice was flat, empty. The funeral's this afternoon. She frowned. 3 days? Why didn't anyone call sooner? Raylan arranged everything. Said he didn't want to bother us until it was necessary. Caleb stood and walked to their dresser. He pulled out jeans and a flannel shirt. We should get ready then. I'll call Gage and let him know I won't be at the shop today. No. Lena stared at his back. What do you mean, no? I'm not going. It's your mother. One final goodbye. Caleb spun around. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. Stay home. Trust me. Don't open the door if anyone knocks. Caleb, what are you talking about? Of course we're going to the funeral. She was your mother. She was a lot of things. He grabbed his keys from the dresser. I'm going to the hardware store. Need to think. Wait. Lena jumped out of bed. You can't just leave me here confused. What's going on? But Caleb was already moving through their small house. She followed him to the kitchen, watching as he checked the deadbolt on the front door twice, then moved to the back door and did the same. Caleb, you're scaring me. He stopped at the landline phone mounted on the kitchen wall and unplugged it from the jack. What the hell are you doing? Just trust me, Lena. Please. His eyes met hers, and she saw something she'd never seen in her husband's face before. Fear. Raw, desperate fear. Whatever happens today, whatever you hear, don't answer the door. Use the peephole. That's it. This is insane. I don't understand any of this. You don't need to understand. You just need to listen to me. He moved toward the door, then turned back. Lock this behind me. Don't let anyone in until I get back. The door slammed before she could respond. Lena stood in her kitchen, wearing nothing but an old t-shirt and underwear, staring at the space where her husband had been. Outside, his truck engine roared to life. She'd been married to Caleb for 8 years. She'd seen him angry, sad, frustrated, excited. She'd never seen him afraid. Caleb Mallory was the steadiest man she knew. He fixed problems. He faced things head-on. He didn't run from anything, but this morning he was running. Lena made coffee and tried to make sense of it. Margaret Mallory had been a difficult woman, certainly. Cold, judgmental, religious to the point of cruelty. But she was still Caleb's mother. Lena had always assumed that when the time came, Caleb would do his duty and bury her properly. She'd been wrong. T2:30 in the afternoon, while Margaret Mallory was being lowered into the ground at Columbia Falls Cemetery. Lena was stripping old paint from a cabinet door in her workshop. She tried to distract herself with work, but her mind kept wandering to Caleb's strange behavior. The doorbell rang. Lena set down her sander and listened. It rang again, followed by 3 sharp knocks. She remembered Caleb's words. Don't open the door if anyone knocks. Use the peephole. That's it. Moving quietly through the house, Lena approached the front door. She pressed her eye to the peephole that a man stood on her porch. Tall, well-dressed in a black suit that looked expensive. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and he held a white envelope in his left hand. He was smiling, but not in a way that reached his eyes, Raylan Ward. She recognized him from the few family photos Caleb kept in a box under their bed. His cousin, the one who'd called about Margaret's death. Raylan rang the bell again, then leaned forward, looking directly at the peephole. His smile widened, and Lena had the disturbing feeling he knew she was watching. He didn't speak, didn't call out, just stood there, smiling that cold smile, holding the envelope. Lena's hand moved toward the deadbolt, then stopped. Caleb's voice echoed in her head. Whatever happens today, whatever you hear, don't answer the door. Minutes passed. Raylan never moved, never looked away from the peephole. Finally, he knelt and slid the envelope under the door. The paper made a soft scraping sound against the wood. When Lena looked through the peephole again, he was gone. She waited another 5 minutes before approaching the envelope. Her name wasn't on it, just Caleb, written in neat, careful handwriting. Lena picked it up and turned it over in her hands. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind used for important documents or formal invitations. She held it up to the light, trying to see through it, but the paper was too thick. For 20 minutes, she sat at her kitchen table, staring at the envelope. Caleb had hidden something from her, something that made him afraid to attend his own mother's funeral, something that made his cousins stand on their porch with that predatory smile. She opened it. The letter inside was brief, typed on plain white paper. Mags may be buried, but what we buried out there still breathes. Silence was always the deal. Some agreements survive the grave. We need to talk. Lena read it 3 times. Each reading made less sense than the last. What had they buried? What deal? What agreements? She was still staring at the letter when Caleb's truck pulled into their driveway an hour later. You opened it. Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at the letter in her hands. Yes, I opened it. A man stood on our porch for 10 minutes, smiling at me through the peephole like some kind of predator, then slid this under our door. What the hell is going on? Caleb crossed to her in 2 quick steps and snatched the letter away. I told you not to answer the door. I didn't answer it, but I'm not going to pretend nothing happened. Lena stood. Who is Raylan, really? And what does this letter mean? Instead of answering, Caleb walked to the stove and turned on a burner. He held the letter over the flame until it caught fire, then dropped it into the sink. Caleb, it's done. No, it's not done. You just burned evidence of something, and I want to know what. Lena grabbed his arm. Talk to me. We don't keep secrets from each other. Some secrets are kept for good reasons. Not from me. Never from me. She moved in front of him, forcing him to look at her. I've been patient all day. I let you disappear for hours. I sat here alone while your mother was buried, but I won't be shut out anymore. Caleb's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like a lost child. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. I can't. Won't. Can't. He moved away from her. Some things are better left buried. That night, while Caleb tossed restlessly beside her, Lena made a decision. If her husband wouldn't tell her the truth, she'd find it herself. The next morning, after Caleb left for his construction job, Lena drove to the Columbia Falls Public Library. She started with property records. The Mallory family land had been in the family for 3 generations, passed down from Caleb's grandfather to his father, then to Margaret. But according to the current records, the land now belonged to Raylan Ward. Not just owned by him, owned by his business, Mountain View Faith Recovery Center. The transfer had happened 6 months ago, while Margaret was still alive. Why would Margaret sign over family land to her nephew instead of her own children? Lena printed the property transfer documents and searched for more information about the recovery center. Their website was professional, filled with testimonials and photos of peaceful mountain landscapes. The center specialized in faith-based trauma recovery and spiritual restoration for troubled families. Raylan's biography described him as an ordained minister and certified trauma counselor who had dedicated his life to helping families heal from spiritual and emotional wounds. It all looked legitimate, respectable. So why had the mention of his name made Caleb lock their doors and unplug their phone? Lena found one more piece of information that made her stomach twist. The The center's main building was the old Mallory family home where Caleb had grown up, the place where Margaret had raised him and his sister June. She needed to talk to June. Finding June Mallory proved easier than expected. A quick internet search revealed she was a registered nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. The hospital's directory listed her in the emergency department. Lena called from her cell phone, sitting in the library parking lot. June Mallory speaking. June, this is Lena, Caleb's wife. Silence stretched across the line. Then, how did you get this number? Hospital directory. June, I need to ask you about your family. I don't have a family. Your mother died 3 days ago. I know. Raylan called. June's voice was flat. I didn't go to the funeral. Neither did Caleb. Another pause. Smart man. June, I need to understand what's happening. Caleb won't talk to me about your mother or Raylan. Something has him scared. Good. He should be scared. What does that mean? It means you should listen to your husband and stay away from anything connected to that side of the family, including Caleb. The words hung in the air for a long moment. Especially Caleb, June said finally. He's my husband. I'm not going to abandon him. Then you're a fool. June's voice softened slightly. Look, I don't know you, but you seem like a decent person. My advice? Pack a bag and leave Columbia Falls. Tonight. I'm not running from something I don't understand. You should. June, please. Help me understand what I'm dealing with. You're dealing with people who destroy everything they touch. People who use God and family as weapons. People who bury their mistakes and pretend they never happened. Lena's pulse quickened. What did they bury? Don't trust anyone from that side of the family, including Caleb. The line went dead. Lena sat in her truck, staring at her phone. June's words echoed in her mind. People who bury their mistakes and pretend they never happened. The letter's words came back to her. What we buried out there still breathes. What had the Mallory family buried? And why was Caleb so afraid of it coming to light? Lena spent the next 3 days watching Caleb. He barely ate, jumped at every sound, and checked the locks on their doors obsessively. When she tried to bring up his mother or Raylan, he shut down completely. On Thursday morning, she made her second trip to the library. This time, she was looking for Margaret Mallory's obituary. The Columbia Falls Gazette had run a brief notice. Margaret Rose Mallory, 67, passed away peacefully at home on October 15th after a long battle with cancer. Services were held at Columbia Falls Community Church, with burial at Columbia Falls Cemetery. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to Mountain View Faith Recovery Center, but something bothered her about the dates. The funeral had been on October 18th, 3 days after Margaret's supposed death. That was normal. What wasn't normal was what Lena found when she cross-referenced those dates with Margaret's medical records. Getting the medical records required a different approach. Lena had learned during her years in the foster system that people left paper trails everywhere, and those trails could be followed if you knew where to look. Margaret had been receiving hospice care through Columbia Falls Medical Center. Hospice records were usually transferred to family members after death, but they were also filed with the County Health Department for statistical purposes. Dr. Patricia Hendricks had been Margaret's primary hospice physician. Her notes, filed with the county, showed Margaret's last medical appointment on October 20th, 2 days after her funeral. The discrepancy made no sense unless Margaret had still been alive when her funeral took place. Lena sat in the health department office, staring at the photocopied medical notes. According to these records, Margaret Mallory had been treated for pain management and end-stage complications on October 20th. The signature on the treatment authorization wasn't Caleb's, though he was listed as next of kin to IT was Raylan Ward's. Raylan had medical power of attorney over Margaret, not her own son. Why would a mother give medical authority to her nephew instead of her children? Lena needed someone who had known the family before everything fell apart. Someone who might remember what the Mallorys had been like when Caleb was younger, Fern Raskin lived 2 streets over from the old Mallory place. She was 83 years old and had been Margaret's closest neighbor for 40 years. If anyone knew the family's secrets, it would be Fern. Lena found her tending tomato plants in her backyard, despite the October cold. "Mrs. Raskin, I'm Lena Mallory, Caleb's wife." Fern looked up from her plants. She was small and frail, but her eyes were sharp. "I know who you are. Heard you were asking questions around town." Word travels fast in a small place, especially when those questions are about the Mallorys. Fern straightened, wincing. "What do you want to know?" "The truth." Fern studied her for a long moment. "Truth's a dangerous thing around here. Some folks prefer their lies comfortable." "I'm not some folks." "No, I suppose you're not." Fern gestured toward her back porch. "Come on. This conversation requires coffee." Fern's kitchen was warm and cluttered, filled with the smell of baking bread and old wood. She poured coffee from a pot that had been sitting on the stove all morning and settled into a chair across from Lena. "You want to know about Margaret and that family of hers. I want to know why my husband is afraid of his own cousin. I want to know why Margaret gave Raylan power of attorney instead of her children. I want to know what they buried." Fern's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. "What did you say?" "I want to know what they buried." "Who told you about that?" "Raylan left a letter. It mentioned something buried that still breathes." Fern set down her mug with shaking hands. "You need to leave this alone." "I can't. Whatever this is, it's destroying my marriage." "Your marriage might be the least of your worries." "Mrs. Raskin, please. I need to understand." Fern was quiet for a long time, staring out her kitchen window toward the mountains. Finally, she spoke. "Margaret wasn't always the way she was at the end. When she first married Robert, that's Caleb's father, she seemed normal enough. Religious, but not crazy religious. That came later." "What changed?" "Robert tried to leave her." This was when Caleb was maybe 10, 11 years old. June was just a baby. Robert had figured out what Margaret was doing to those kids. Lena's blood chilled. What was she doing? She called it spiritual discipline. Said the children were filled with demons that needed to be driven out. She'd lock them in the basement for days, make them pray until they passed out, beat them with a switch while reciting Bible verses. And Robert was going to leave. Packed his bags and everything, but he never made it out of town. Why not? Fern looked directly at Lena. Because he didn't die in a car crash like they said. He tried to run from something. Margaret made sure he didn't get far. The words hit Lena like a physical blow. "Are you saying Margaret killed her husband?" "I'm saying Robert's car was found wrapped around a tree on Mountain Road, but there wasn't any skid marks. No sign he tried to stop or swerve. And Margaret collected that life insurance policy awfully quick for a grieving widow." "What about the police?" "Sheriff at the time was Margaret's first cousin. Ruled it an accident within 24 hours. Fern leaned forward. After Robert died, Margaret got worse. Started bringing in other family members to help with her ministry. Said she was saving souls, but what she was really doing was breaking children. Other family members like Raylan. Raylan was the worst of them. Smart but twisted. Margaret taught him everything she knew about control and manipulation. By the time he was 18, he was running the show." "What show?" Fern hesitated. "Margaret turned that property into a place where families could send their troubled children. Kids who were acting out, asking too many questions, showing signs of independence. Parents would pay Margaret to fix them. Fix them how? However she saw fit. Isolation, starvation, beatings. She called it cleansing rituals. Said she was driving out demons and rebellious spirits. Lena felt sick. And Caleb and June lived through it all. But worse than that, when they got older, Margaret forced them to help, made them participate in punishing other children, said it was their Christian duty. Forced them how? Same way she forced everyone. Fear, shame, isolation. Made them believe they were sinful and worthless without her guidance. Made them complicit in what she was doing so they couldn't turn against her without implicating themselves. The coffee in Lena's stomach turned to acid. How long did this go on? Years. From the time Robert died until June ran away at 17. After that, Margaret kept Caleb close. He was the only family she had left who would obey her. What about the other children? The ones who were sent there for fixing? Fern's face went pale. Most of them went home eventually, broken but alive. But some what? Some didn't make it through the cleansing. Lena set down her coffee mug before her shaking hands could drop it. How many? I don't know for sure. There were rumors over the years. Kids who went up to the Mallory place and never came back. Parents were told their children had run away or had been sent to other facilities. But sometimes, late at night, you could hear digging on that property. Did anyone ever report this to authorities? Margaret owned the authorities. Sheriff, mayor, half the town council. Anyone who tried to speak up found themselves in serious trouble. Lost jobs, lost homes, lost custody of their remaining children. And Raylan learned from the best. When Margaret started getting sick, he took over the operation, made it more professional, more secretive, turned it into that recovery center you see now. Lena stood abruptly. I need to see that property. No. Fern grabbed her arm with surprising strength. You need to take your husband and leave town. Tonight. I can't run from this. You can't fight it either. These people have been covering their tracks for 30 years. They've got money, connections, and they're willing to kill to protect their secrets. You think they killed Margaret? I think Margaret knew too much and was getting ready to talk. Dying people sometimes develop conscience. Lena pulled away from Fern's grip. What did they bury on that property? Bodies, Fern whispered. Children who couldn't be fixed. Children who fought too hard or knew too much or simply broke under the pressure. How many? I don't know. But if you go looking for them, you'll end up buried right alongside them. That evening, Lena confronted Caleb with what she'd learned. He listened in silence as she recounted her conversation with Fern, his face growing paler with each revelation. Is it true? She asked when she finished. Caleb sat at their kitchen table, his head in his hands. Yes. All of it. All of it. And you never told me. How could I? How do you tell someone you love that you helped torture children, that you stood by while people died? Lena felt a cold rage building in her chest. You tell them the truth. You trust them to understand. There's no understanding this, Lena. There's no forgiveness for what we did. Caleb looked up at her. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. I was 12 when it started, old enough to know right from wrong, but too scared to fight back. Margaret made me participate, said it was God's will, said I was helping save souls. What did you do? Whatever she told me to. Held kids down while she beat them, locked them in the basement, brought them food and water when she decided they'd suffered enough. His voice broke. I told myself I was just following orders, that I was a victim too. You were a victim. You were a child. I was old enough to know better. Lena pulled out a chair and sat across from him. Tell me about the burials. Caleb flinched. There was a girl, Marla. She was my cousin, Raylan's younger sister. She was 15, sent to us because she'd been caught with a boy from school. Margaret said she was filled with sexual demons that needed to be driven out. What happened to her? The exorcism lasted 3 days. No food, no water, constant physical and psychological abuse. Margaret said she could see the demons fighting to stay inside Marla, that we had to be stronger than they were. And on the third day, Marla collapsed. Heart failure, the doctor said later. But by then it was too late. What doctor? Dr. Pemberton. He's dead now, but back then he was on Margaret's payroll. He ruled it a heart defect. Said Marla had been born with a weak heart and the stress of adolescence had been too much. Where is she buried? Behind the chapel on the property. There's a marker that says unclaimed 1988. But underneath that marker is Marla. Lena's mind raced. Are there others? One more that I know of. A boy named Tommy who came to us from Kalispell. He lasted 6 months before he couldn't take it anymore. Hung himself in the basement. Also buried on the property. Near Marla. And Raylan knows all this. Raylan helped cover it up. He was 17 when Marla died, old enough to understand what we were doing. But instead of stopping it, he embraced it, said we were soldiers in God's army, that some casualties were inevitable. Lena stood and began pacing. We have to report this. To who? Half the people who were involved back then are still in positions of power. The other half are dead. To the FBI, to the state police, to someone who isn't connected to this town. With what evidence? It's been 30 years, Lena. The bodies are gone, the witnesses are dead or too scared to talk, and the records have been sanitized. The bodies are gone. Caleb nodded. Raylan moved them when he started the recovery center. Couldn't risk having a legitimate business operating over a graveyard. Move them where? I don't know. He didn't trust me enough to tell me. Lena stopped pacing. But Fern said she heard fresh digging recently. Maybe he moved them back. Or maybe there are new bodies. The thought made Lena's stomach lurch. Is the center still operating? As far as I know, Raylan's got it set up as a legitimate business now. Licensed therapists, proper permits, regular inspections. But underneath, it's the same thing Margaret was doing, just more subtle. Then we have to stop it. How? We have no proof, no allies, and no credibility. Who's going to believe a carpenter and a construction worker over a respected businessman with political connections? Lena stopped pacing and looked at her husband. Someone who's been there. Someone who's seen the basement and the burial sites. What are you talking about? I'm going to visit the center as a potential donor or volunteer. I'm going to get inside that building and document everything I can. Absolutely not. If Raylan even suspects you know something, he'll kill you. Then I won't let him suspect. Lena, please. I've lost everything else. I can't lose you too. She sat back down and took his hands. You haven't lost me, but I need you to understand that I can't live with this knowledge and do nothing. Those children deserve justice. Justice won't bring them back. No, but it might prevent others from dying. Caleb squeezed her hands. If you're determined to do this, then I'm going with you. You can't. Raylan knows you. He'll be suspicious if you suddenly show up after years of avoiding the family. Then, how will you get in? I'll call and tell them I'm a local woodworker interested in donating materials for renovation projects. Religious organizations love free labor and materials. And if he recognizes your name, then I'll use my maiden name, Lena Hayes. There's no reason he would connect me to you. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. If you do this, you need to promise me something. What? If anything goes wrong, if you sense any danger at all, you run. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to gather more evidence. You run and you call the police. I promise. But even as she said it, Lena knew she was lying. If she found evidence of ongoing abuse or murder, she wouldn't run. She would fight. The next morning, Lena called Mountain View Faith Recovery Center. The woman who answered sounded young and cheerful. Mountain View, this is Kelly speaking. Hi, Kelly. My name is Lena Hayes. I'm a woodworker here in town, and I was wondering if your facility might be interested in some donated materials for renovation projects. Oh, that's so generous. Let me transfer you to our facilities manager. He handles all the building maintenance and improvements. While she waited on hold, Lena reviewed the story she'd prepared. She was a local artisan who specialized in rustic furniture and cabinetry. She'd heard about the center's good work and wanted to contribute to the community. This is David Spencer. I understand you're interested in donating materials. That's right. I do custom woodwork, and I often have leftover materials from projects. Rather than let them go to waste, I like to donate them to worthy causes. That's very kind. Why don't you come by this afternoon? I can show you around the facility, and we can discuss what kinds of materials would be most useful. That sounds perfect. What time works for you? How about 2 o'clock? I'll be there. After hanging up, Lena gathered the equipment she would need. A small digital camera that could fit in her pocket, a voice recorder app on her phone, a small notebook and pen. She also called Gage Monroe. Gage had been her closest friend since she'd moved to Columbia Falls 10 years ago. He was smart, loyal, and had a healthy distrust of authority. If anyone would help her investigate the Mallory family secrets, it would be Gage. Lena's fine woodworking, Gage speaking. Very funny. Can you meet me for lunch? Is everything okay? You sound weird. I need your help with something. Something important and potentially dangerous. I'll be right over. 20 minutes later, Gage knocked on her door. He was a tall, lean man with grease-stained hands and intelligent eyes. He took one look at her face and sat down at her kitchen table. What's going on? Lena told him everything. Caleb's reaction to his mother's death, Raylan's threatening letter, her conversation with Fern, and Caleb's confession about the murders and cover-up. Gage listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You're sure about this? About the murders? Caleb confirmed it. 2 children dead, buried on the property. And you're planning to walk into this place alone? I'm planning to gather evidence. Evidence we can take to federal authorities. I was hoping you'd help me. Gage leaned back in his chair. You know I'd do anything for you, Lena. But this sounds like it could get us both killed. Maybe. Or maybe it could save lives. What do you need me to do? Research. I need you to find out everything you can about Raylan Ward, the recovery center, and anyone connected to it. Financial records, business licenses, employee information, anything that might give us leverage. I can do that. What else? If something happens to me at that facility, I need you to know where I've gone and why. I need someone who can tell the authorities what we've discovered. Gage nodded. What about Caleb? Is he helping with this? Caleb is too scared and too damaged to be objective. He thinks we should run. Leave town and never look back. Maybe he's right. Running doesn't stop evil, Gage. It just lets it continue unopposed. And dying doesn't stop it either. Then I'll have to make sure I don't die. At 2 o'clock, Lena drove to the Mountain View Faith Recovery Center. The facility was larger than she'd expected, with multiple buildings spread across the old Mallory property. The main house had been renovated, but was still recognizable as the home where Caleb had grown up. David Spencer met her in the parking lot. He was a middle-aged man with a friendly smile and a firm handshake. Ms. Hayes? I'm David. Thanks for coming out. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. Let me show you around. We're always excited to meet community members who want to support our mission. As they walked toward the main building, Lena took photos with her phone, trying to look like a casual tourist documenting her visit. The grounds were well maintained with prayer gardens and walking paths that looked peaceful and therapeutic. What exactly do you do here? She asked. We help families heal from trauma and spiritual wounds. Many of our clients come to us after experiencing religious abuse or spiritual manipulation. We provide counseling, therapy, and a safe space for them to reconnect with healthy spirituality. The irony was staggering. A facility built on a foundation of religious abuse now claimed to help people recover from religious abuse. How long has the center been operating? About 5 years now. We started small but have grown as word spread about our success rate. And Mr. Ward is the director. That's right. Raylan is incredibly dedicated to this work. He's helped hundreds of families over the years. They entered the main building through what had once been the Mallory family's front door. The interior had been completely renovated with modern furniture and calming colors, but Lena could still sense the bones of the old house underneath. "This is our main therapy wing," David explained, leading her down a hallway lined with office doors. "We have 6 licensed therapists on staff, plus support personnel." "What's downstairs?" David paused. "Downstairs?" "I noticed stairs going down near the entrance. Is that more therapy space?" No, that's just storage and mechanical systems. Nothing interesting down there." But Lena had seen the way his smile faltered when she asked about the basement. And she'd noticed something else, a heavy steel door at the bottom of the stairs, the kind of door used for security purposes rather than storage. They continued the tour through common areas, a commercial kitchen, and several conference rooms. Everything looked legitimate and professional. If she hadn't known the history of this place, Lena would have been impressed by the facility. "Would it be possible to see the chapel?" she asked. "I noticed it on your website." "The chapel is currently under renovation. Safety concerns, you know. We're hoping to have it reopened by Christmas." Another lie. Through the windows, Lena could see the chapel clearly. There was no construction equipment, no signs of renovation. But there was something else freshly turned earth behind the building, just visible through the trees. "Well, I think I've seen enough to know that this is exactly the kind of place I'd like to support," she said. "What kinds of materials would be most useful?" David brightened. "We're always in need of lumber for maintenance projects. And if you do cabinetry, we could certainly use some storage solutions in our therapy offices. I'll put together a list of what I have available and get back to you." "That would be wonderful. Here's my card. Feel free to call if you have any questions." As Lena drove away from the center, her mind was racing. The basement door, the renovated chapel, the fresh earth behind the building, it all pointed to ongoing activity that had nothing to do with legitimate therapy. But she needed more than suspicions. She needed proof. That evening, she met with Gage at his auto shop. He'd spent the day researching Raylan Ward and a recovery center, and what he'd found was disturbing. "The center is profitable," he reported, pulling up financial documents on his computer. "Really profitable. They're charging families between $5,000 and $10,000 per month for residential treatment. How many residents do they have?" According to their licensing documents, they're approved for up to 20 residential clients at a time. But here's the weird part: their supply orders don't match their stated capacity. "What do you mean?" "They're ordering enough food, medical supplies, and other necessities for at least 40 people. Either they're running at double capacity illegally, or they're supplying other facilities, or they're holding people who aren't supposed to be there." "That's what I was thinking." Gage pulled up another document. "I also found something interesting about their staff. 3 of their therapists don't exist." "What do you mean?" "The names on their licensing documents, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Dr. Michael Torres, Dr. Rebecca Chin, none of them show up in any professional licensing databases. Either they're using fake credentials, or those people don't exist." Lena felt a chill. What about Raylan's credentials? "Those are real but interesting. He does have a master's degree in counseling, and he is ordained as a minister. But his ordination comes from a mail-order ministry that requires no training or oversight. So he's technically qualified to run a treatment center." "Technically, yes, but his background is suspicious. Before starting the center, he worked at 3 other residential facilities in Montana and Idaho. All three of those facilities were shut down for abuse allegations, and nobody thought to investigate him before licensing this place. That's where it gets really interesting. The licensing inspection for Mountain View was conducted by the state health department, but the inspector who signed off on it retired immediately after completing the review, moved to Florida, and bought a house worth 3 times his government salary. He was paid off. Looks like it. And the ongoing inspections are handled by a private company that Raylan's recovery center pays directly. So he's essentially paying people to overlook violations. That's my guess. Lena stood and began pacing around Gage's cluttered office. We need to document what's really happening in that facility. We need photos, recordings, witness testimony. How do you propose we get that? It's not like we can just walk in and start interviewing patients. No, but we can get close enough to observe, and we can try to contact former employees or clients. That could take weeks or months. Then we'd better get started. Over the next few days, Lena and Gage developed a systematic plan. They would take turns conducting surveillance of the facility, documenting who came and went, what vehicles were used, and what activities took place on the grounds. They would also research former employees and try to locate people who might be willing to speak about their experiences. Meanwhile, Lena had another conversation with June. This time, she was more direct about what she needed. June, I know you don't want to get involved, but I need to know about Marla and Tommy. I need details about how they died and where they were buried. Why are you doing this to yourself? June's voice was tired. Why can't you just leave it alone? Because it's still happening. Raylan is still running that facility, and I think people are still dying. June was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Marla was my cousin. She was beautiful and smart and full of life. She came to us because her parents thought she was becoming too independent, too rebellious. Margaret convinced them that a few months of spiritual discipline would set her straight. What happened during the exorcism? Margaret believed that sexual desire was a form of demonic possession. She would strip girls naked and beat them while screaming Bible verses about purity and obedience. She would force them to confess to sexual thoughts and activities, real or imagined, until they broke down completely. And Caleb participated in this. All of us did. Margaret made sure of that. She said we were all complicit in Marla's corruption if we didn't help drive out her demons. How did she die? Dehydration and exhaustion, probably. But Margaret said it was because the demons had damaged her heart while fighting to stay inside her body. She made us believe that Marla's death was somehow necessary, that it was God's will. And Tommy was different. He was older, maybe 16, and he fought back. He would curse at Margaret, refuse to pray, try to escape. She kept him in the basement for months, trying to break his spirit. What was the basement like? Small rooms with concrete walls and no windows. Margaret called them meditation cells, but they were really solitary confinement. Kids would be locked in there for days or weeks at a time with minimal food and water. And Tommy killed himself in one of those rooms. He made a noose from his bedsheet. Margaret found him the next morning. June's voice broke. He left a note saying he couldn't take it anymore, that he'd rather die than continue living in hell. What happened to the note? Raylan burned it, said it was evidence of the boy's spiritual corruption and couldn't be allowed to exist. June, I need you to come back to Montana. I need you to help me expose what happened. I can't. I've built a life here. I have a career, friends, a future. I can't go back to that place. You don't have to go back, but you could talk to federal investigators. You could provide testimony about what you witnessed. And destroy everything I've worked for? Become known as the woman who helped torture children? No, I won't do it. But you could save other children. Or I could end up dead like Marla and Tommy. The call ended with June refusing to help, But Lena now had detailed information about the murders and the facility's layout. She knew about the basement cells and the original burial site behind the chapel. Most importantly, she knew that Raylan had been directly involved in covering up both deaths. That night, she shared everything with Gage and began planning their next move. "We need to get inside that basement," she told him. "If those cells still exist, they're evidence of ongoing abuse. And how do you propose we get inside? Break in? I'm going back as a volunteer. I'll tell them I want to donate time as well as materials. If I can get access to the building during off hours, I might be able to photograph the basement. That's incredibly dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. But if we don't act soon, more people are going to die." Lena spent the weekend preparing for what she knew would be the most dangerous part of her investigation. She'd contacted the Helena Independent Record, a statewide newspaper with a reputation for investigative journalism. The reporter she spoke with, Maria Santos, had covered corruption cases before and seemed genuinely interested in the story. "If you can get me solid evidence," Maria had said, "photographs, documents, witness testimony, I can get this story national attention. But I need proof, not just allegations." Lena also made copies of everything they'd discovered and mailed them to 3 different locations: Gage's safety deposit box, her own attorney in Kalispell, and a friend in Seattle who had no connection to Montana. If something happened to her, the evidence would survive. On Monday morning, she called David Spencer at the Recovery Center. "David, this is Lena Hayes. I've got those material lists ready for you, and I was wondering if I could also volunteer some time." "That's wonderful, Lena. What kind of volunteer work interests you?" "I'm handy with tools, and I enjoy helping people. Maybe I could assist with building maintenance or help out during evening activities." "Let me talk to Raylan about it. Can I call you back this afternoon?" "Of course." At 3 o'clock, David called back with approval for her to volunteer. She could start that evening, helping with dinner preparation and cleanup. It was perfect. Evening hours would give her access to the building when most of the staff had gone home. But first, she had one more person to contact. She called Raylan directly. "Mountain View Faith Recovery, this is Raylan Ward." "Mr. Ward, my name is Lena Hayes. I'm a local woodworker who's been talking to David Spencer about donating materials and volunteering." "Yes, David mentioned you. How can I help?" "I was hoping we could meet before I start volunteering. I like to understand the mission and philosophy of organizations before I commit my time." "That's very wise. Are you available this afternoon?" "I could come by around 4:30. "Perfect. I'll meet you in my office." Lena hung up and checked her equipment one more time. The voice recorder app on her phone was working perfectly. The tiny camera in her jacket pocket was fully charged. She'd written a detailed letter explaining her plans and left it with Gage, along with instructions to contact the FBI if she didn't return by midnight. 4:30. She walked into Raylan Ward's office. He was younger than she'd expected, probably in his early 40s, with the kind of polished appearance that came from expensive clothes and regular grooming. His office was decorated with religious symbols and motivational posters, but there was something cold in his eyes that contradicted the inspirational surroundings. "Ms. Hayes, please have a seat. David tells me you're interested in supporting our mission." "That's right. I believe in helping people overcome trauma and find healing." "And what draws you to this particular kind of work?" Lena had prepared for this question. "I grew up in foster care. I understand what it's like to feel abandoned and damaged. If I can help other people find their way back to wholeness, I want to do that." Raylan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's commendable. Tell me, are you married? Do you have family in the area?" "I'm married. My husband works construction. We don't have children." "And your husband supports your volunteer work?" "He trusts me to make my own decisions." "How refreshing. So many women today struggle with proper submission to their husband's authority." Lena bit back her response to that comment and smiled instead. I suppose I'm fortunate to have married a man who respects my independence. Independence can be a dangerous thing if it's not properly guided. We see that here all the time. Young people who've been given too much freedom, too many choices. They become confused, rebellious, unable to accept proper authority. Is that why their families send them here? Partly. Many of our clients have been damaged by secular psychology and liberal theology. They've been taught that their feelings and desires matter more than God's will. We help them understand that true freedom comes from complete surrender to divine authority. Lena's recorder was capturing every word. And how do you help them achieve that surrender? Through discipline, prayer, and submission. We remove the distractions and temptations that led them astray. We create an environment where they can focus entirely on their spiritual growth. What kind of distractions? Books, music, television, contact with family members who might undermine their progress. We've found that isolation is often necessary for true transformation. That sounds intensive. Transformation is never easy. Sometimes families aren't prepared for the level of commitment required. They want quick results without understanding that real spiritual change can take months or even years. Years. For some of our more challenging cases, yes. We have clients who've been with us for 3 or 4 years. Their families trust us to do whatever is necessary to help them. Lena thought about the financial documents Gage had found. Families paying $10,000 a month for years would generate enormous profits. What happens if someone wants to leave before they're ready? Raylan's smile became predatory. We've found that the desire to leave is usually evidence that the transformation process is working. The rebellious spirit fights hardest just before it's defeated. We help our clients understand that their desire to escape is actually a sign that they need to stay. And if they insist on leaving, we work with their families to ensure they make the right decision. Sometimes family members need to be reminded of their authority and responsibility. What if the client is over 18? Don't they have the legal right to leave? Legal rights are meaningless without spiritual wisdom. Many of our adult clients have signed voluntary commitment agreements that allow us to make decisions in their best interest. Lena's blood turned cold. Voluntary commitment agreements that prevented people from leaving sounded like kidnapping with paperwork. That's fascinating. I'd love to learn more about your methods. Perhaps you should start volunteering first. Direct experience is often more valuable than theoretical discussion. You're absolutely right. I'm looking forward to helping however I can. Raylan stood, signaling the end of their meeting. David will show you around this evening and get you started. I'm sure you'll find the work rewarding. As Lena left his office, she felt sick. Everything Raylan had said confirmed her worst fears about the facility. They were holding people against their will, isolating them from family, and using psychological manipulation disguised as therapy, but she still needed concrete evidence. She needed photographs of the basement cells and documentation of the people being held there. That evening, she returned to the center as a volunteer. David Spencer met her at the main entrance and handed her a volunteer badge. "Tonight you'll be helping in the kitchen," he explained. "We serve dinner at 6, and cleanup usually takes about an hour. Will I get to meet any of the clients?" "Some of them help with meal preparation, so you'll probably interact with a few. Just remember that many of them are dealing with serious psychological issues, so keep conversations light and positive." The kitchen was larger than Lena had expected, clearly designed to feed more people than the facility's stated capacity. As she helped prepare vegetables, she counted at least 30 place settings being laid out in the dining room. The clients who helped with dinner preparation looked nothing like the happy, healing people depicted on the center's website. They were thin, nervous, and spoke in whispers when they spoke at all. Several had the hollow-eyed look of people who weren't getting enough sleep. "How long have you been here?" Lena asked a young woman who was chopping carrots beside her, The woman glanced around nervously before answering. 2 years. 2 years? You must really like it here. I'm not ready to leave yet. Mr. Ward says I still have spiritual work to do. What kind of work? I have to learn to control my rebellious thoughts. I keep wanting to call my family, but that's just selfishness talking. Lena's stomach twisted. When was the last time you talked to your family? 6 months ago. But Mr. Ward says contact with the outside world interferes with spiritual growth. After dinner, Lena volunteered to help with cleanup while most of the staff left for the day. By 8 o'clock, only 2 staff members remained in the building, David, and a security guard who spent most of his time watching television in the front lobby. I'm going to finish mopping the dining room, Lena told David. You don't need to wait around for me. Are you sure? I don't mind staying. I'm fine. I'll lock up when I'm finished. David hesitated, then handed her a set of keys. The main doors lock automatically, but you'll need these for the supply closets. Just drop them in the mail slot when you're done. After David left, Lena had the building largely to herself. The security guard was stationed at the front entrance, but the rest of the facility was empty except for the clients, who were locked in their rooms for the night. She made her way quietly to the basement stairs. The steel door at the bottom was locked, but one of David's keys opened it. Lena found herself in a narrow hallway lined with doors, 6 rooms total, each with a small window and a heavy lock. She looked through the first window and saw a bare concrete cell with a thin mattress on the floor. The room was maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, with no other furniture or decoration. The second cell was occupied. A teenage boy sat on the mattress, staring at the wall. When he saw her face in the window, he jumped up and pressed his hands against the glass. Please, he mouthed silently. Help me. Lena's hands shook as she photographed the cells. This was exactly what June had described the meditation cells where children were locked in solitary confinement for weeks at a time. And the third cell. She found a girl who couldn't have been more than 16. She was lying on the mattress, unmoving. Lena tapped on the window, but the girl didn't respond. The 4th and 5th cells were empty, but the 6th contained a woman in her 20s who was sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth. Lena tried the door handle on the first cell, but it was locked from the outside. These people were prisoners, not patients. She photographed everything: the cells, the locks, the narrow hallway. She also recorded video of the boy pressing his hands against the window, his mouth forming the word help over and over again. As she prepared to leave the basement, she heard footsteps upstairs. Someone else was in the building. Lena turned off her phone's camera and moved quietly back toward the stairs. The footsteps were moving through the main hallway, getting closer to the basement entrance. She had 2 choices: try to hide in the basement until whoever it was left, or go upstairs and pretend she'd been cleaning the dining room the whole time. The basement was a dead end. If someone came down and found her, she'd have no way to escape. She climbed the stairs and closed the steel door behind her, just as Raylan Ward rounded the corner. Ms. Hayes, I didn't expect to find you here so late. I wanted to finish the cleaning properly. I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to work. Raylan studied her face. And what work were you doing down here? Lena's mind raced. Down here? I haven't been downstairs. I was in the dining room. Then why are you coming up from the basement? I was looking for cleaning supplies. David said I could use the keys to access supply closets. The supply closets are on the main floor. I know that now. I got turned around in the dark. Raylan stepped closer to her. What did you see down there? Storage rooms and mechanical equipment, like David said. Nothing interesting. Show me your phone. What? Your phone. Show it to me. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Why? Because I think you took pictures of things you weren't supposed to see. I don't know what you're talking about. Raylan pulled out his own phone and pressed a button. Within seconds, the security guard appeared at the top of the stairs. Carl, Miss Hayes has been taking unauthorized photographs in the basement. I need you to confiscate her phone and escort her off the property. That's not necessary, Lena said. I'll leave voluntarily. After you give me your phone. Lena calculated her chances of getting past both men. Carl was large and looked like he was used to physical confrontation. Raylan was smaller, but probably faster. I don't think I'm required to give you my personal property. You're on private property without permission. Carl, take her phone. The security guard moved toward her. Lena backed toward the main entrance. If you touch me, I'll file assault charges. Against who? Raylan smiled. A respected businessman defending his facility against a trespasser? Good luck with that. Carl grabbed her arm. Lena twisted away and ran for the front door, but it was locked. She fumbled with the keys David had given her, but Carl reached her before she could find the right one. Give me the phone, he said, grabbing her wrist. Get your hands off me. Carl twisted her arm behind her back and reached for her phone with his free hand. Lena kicked backward, connecting with his shin. He cursed and tightened his grip. Enough, Raylan said. Carl, bring her to my office. We need to discuss what she really wants. Carl forced her down the hallway to Raylan's office and pushed her into a chair. Raylan closed the door and sat behind his desk. Now then, Miss Hayes, or should I say Mrs. Mallory? Lena's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you mean. I know exactly who you are. Caleb's wife. The woman who's been asking questions around town about my family. How did you know who you are? I've known since the moment you called. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize the name of the only person in town foolish enough to investigate the Mallory family? Raylan opened his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. I have quite a file on you, Lena. Born in Portland, raised in foster care, moved to Montana 10 years ago. Married Caleb 8 years ago. Owns a small woodworking business. No children, no close family. What do you want? I want to know what you think you're going to accomplish with your little investigation. I want justice for the children you murdered. Raylan laughed. Children I murdered? That's quite an accusation. Do you have any proof of these supposed murders? I have testimony from people who were there. From Caleb? A man who participated in everything he claims to oppose? A man who helped bury the bodies and then kept quiet about it for 30 years. From June. June won't testify against me. She's too afraid of what it would do to her precious new life in Chicago. From Fern Raskin. An 83-year-old woman with no first-hand knowledge of anything that happened on this property. Hearsay and speculation. Lena realized he was right. All of her evidence was circumstantial or second-hand. The only concrete proof she had was the photographs on her phone. What about the basement cells, the people you're holding against their will? You mean our therapy rooms? All of our clients are here voluntarily. They've signed legal documents giving us authority to make treatment decisions. Voluntary commitment agreements that prevent them from leaving. Standard practice in the mental health field. People with severe psychological disorders often lack the capacity to make rational decisions about their treatment. Those people aren't mentally ill. They're prisoners. Prove it. Raylan stood and walked around his desk to stand behind her chair. Here's what's going to happen, Lena. You're going to give me your phone. You're going to stop asking questions about my family. And you're going to convince your husband to keep his mouth shut. And if I don't, then bad things will happen to people you care about. Accidents happen all the time in construction work. Equipment fails. Buildings collapse. Men get hurt. The threat against Caleb made her blood boil. You bastard. I prefer Mr. Ward. He held out his hand. Your phone. Lena had no choice. She pulled out her phone and handed it to him. Raylan scrolled through her photos, deleting the ones she'd taken in the basement. You got some good shots, he admitted. Too bad nobody will ever see them. I already sent copies to other people. No, you didn't. You're not that smart. But he was wrong. Before leaving home that evening, Lena had uploaded all of her photos to a cloud storage account that Gage could access. Even if Raylan destroyed her phone, the evidence would survive. Carl, escort Mrs. Mallory to her vehicle. Make sure she understands that she's no longer welcome on this property. As Carl grabbed her arm again, Lena looked directly at Raylan. This isn't over. Yes, it is. But Raylan Ward had made a crucial mistake. In his arrogance, he'd confessed to knowing about the murders. He'd admitted to holding people against their will. And he'd threatened Caleb's life, all of which had been recorded by the app that was still running on Lena's phone. Scene 9. Lena's final move. Lena drove straight to Gage's shop. He was waiting for her with a laptop and a cup of coffee. Did you get it? I got it all. Lena connected her phone to his computer and started downloading the recording. He confessed to everything, Gage. And he threatened Caleb. What's our next move? We contact Maria Santos at the newspaper and give her everything. Then we call the FBI. Are you sure we have enough? We have recorded confessions, photographs of illegal imprisonment, and testimony from multiple witnesses. It's enough. Lena spent the next hour uploading all of their evidence to a secure server and sending links to Maria Santos. By midnight, she'd also contacted the FBI field office in Great Falls and provided them with a detailed summary of her investigation. They're sending agents tomorrow, she told Gage. They want to interview me first, then conduct a raid on the facility. What about Caleb? I need to tell him what happened, and I need to make sure he's willing to testify. Lena found Caleb waiting for her at home, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. Where the hell have you been? I've been calling your phone for hours. At the recovery center, getting proof. What kind of proof? Lena showed him the photographs and played the recording of her conversation with Raylan. Caleb's face went white as he listened to his cousin's voice. He knows who you are, Caleb said when the recording ended. Yes. He threatened to kill me. Yes. And you're still going to pursue this? Especially now. Caleb sat down heavily at their kitchen table. You don't understand what he's capable of. I understand exactly what he's capable of. That's why he has to be stopped. What if the FBI doesn't believe us? What if his connections protect him? Then we'll find another way. But we're not running, Caleb. We're not hiding. We're going to see this through. Caleb looked at his wife with a mixture of love and terror. You're going to get us both killed. Maybe. Or maybe we're going to save lives. The next morning, FBI agents arrived at the recovery center with search warrants. They found the basement cells exactly as Lena had described them, with 3 people still locked inside. They also found financial records showing that the center had been billing families for clients who had died months or years earlier. The discovery that shook everyone was behind the chapel. Ground-penetrating radar revealed 2 sets of human remains buried in unmarked graves. When the bodies were exhumed, they were identified as Marla Ward and Tommy Richardson, the children who had died during Margaret Mallory's exorcisms 30 years earlier. Raylan Ward was arrested on charges of kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Several town officials who had helped cover up the facility's activities were also arrested, including the current sheriff and 2 county commissioners. The raid made national news. Within days, families from across the country were coming forward with stories about children who had been sent to similar facilities and never returned home. Maria Santos's article in the Helena Independent Record was picked up by major newspapers and television networks. The story of the Mountain View Faith Recovery Center became a symbol of the need for oversight and regulation of private treatment facilities. But for Lena, the victory felt hollow. Caleb had cooperated with the FBI investigation, providing detailed testimony about the murders he'd witnessed and the cover-up that followed. His cooperation had been crucial in building the case against Raylan, but Lena couldn't forgive him for staying silent for 30 years while other children suffered. You could have spoken sooner, she told him the night after Raylan's arrest. You could have prevented this. I was scared. I was a child when it started, and then I was too damaged to think clearly. You weren't a child when you married me. You weren't a child when we bought this house and built a life together. You were an adult who chose to keep murderous secrets. I thought it was over. I thought Raylan would let the past stay buried. But you didn't know that. You hoped, but you didn't know. And while you were hoping, he was hurting other people. Caleb reached for her, but she pulled away. Lena, please. I'm sorry. I know I should have acted sooner. Sorry doesn't bring back the children who died while you stayed silent. Sorry doesn't heal the people who were tortured while you pretended nothing was wrong. What do you want me to do? I can't change the past. I want you to understand that I can't forgive this. I can't stay married to someone who was complicit in murder, even if he was a victim first. You're leaving me. I'm leaving you. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Lena kept the house and the woodworking business. Caleb moved to Billings and found work with a construction company that didn't ask too many questions about his past. June never returned to Montana, but she did provide testimony to federal investigators via video conference. Her detailed accounts of the abuse she'd witnessed helped prosecutors build their case against other former associates of Margaret Mallory's operation. Raylan Ward was convicted on 17 felony counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The recovery center was shut down permanently, and the property was sold to the state for use as a memorial park. Lena used her share of the settlement money to establish the Marla and Tommy Foundation, a legal aid organization that provided free representation to survivors of institutional abuse. The foundation also lobbied for stronger oversight of private treatment facilities and better protection for vulnerable children that on the first anniversary of the raid, Lena visited the memorial that had been erected behind the old chapel. The marker bore the names of all the children who had died on the property, along with the inscription, "In memory of those whose voices were silenced. May their deaths serve as a call to protect the innocent." She placed white roses on Marla's grave and spoke to the girl she'd never met. "Your death wasn't meaningless," she said. "Your truth finally came to light. And because of you, other children are safe now." As she walked back to her truck, Lena felt the weight of everything she'd lost: her marriage, her trust in the man she'd loved, her faith in the system that was supposed to protect children. But she also felt something else. The satisfaction of knowing she'd done what was right, regardless of the cost. Justice wasn't about forgiveness or redemption. It was about accountability and consequences. It was about making sure that those who harmed others faced the full weight of their crimes. Raylan Ward would spend the rest of his life in prison. Margaret Mallory's legacy of abuse had been exposed and dismantled. The children who had died on that property finally had justice. For Lena, that was enough.